he is my brother. So I am deeply grateful and honored to be here. I've had association with this church for well over those years. In fact, when the church was next door, I was ordained there in 1969. I pay tribute to Brother Archie Webb, Brother Sturley, Brother Tom, Sister Naomi. Some of my great memories is one of my favorite people in my life was Brother Archie. He spoke volumes into my life. As a matter of fact, when I went to Reading to pastor, Brother Archie came and did the installation service. When the flood hit here and this became beach property, and you have a winch coat around this building because the water had filled this building, and I called Brother Archie and I said, Brother Archie, I said, are you doing okay? And he said, we finally got all the water out of the church and all the pews are out in the parking lot and we're in a mess. And I said, what can I do? He said, we can't find any carpet cleaners. All of them are gone. Well, I went to work and we brought, I don't remember how many cleaners, probably 8 or 9 cleaners, and I brought 16 men here. I asked Brother Archie, I said, who's helping you? And this is so devastating that everybody was trying to dig out themselves. Not a lot of help. We brought 16 men down here and we stayed the week. Brother Archie, I told him, I said, you let the people know they're going to be in church on Sunday. That was Sunday morning. Sister Naomi, I believe you remember, out in the front, somebody was handing out plastic bags because all the pews were still a little wet. And they were trying to keep people from... So that was a fantastic memory, and I love Brother Archie so much. Another man that impacted me here so much is Brother Nathan McFarland. He was a major mentor in my life. He supplied a lot of wisdom to me. I pastored in Grass Valley, California for about a year and something. I worked for the Forest Service. I was a cruiser and a scaler for them, and I worked with some rough guys. Man, their language was terrible. And I'm in the vehicles with them driving into the forest, and when their language is all the time, you have to think that. You know what I'm saying? If you're going to communicate or you're going to talk to them, you got to interpret what they're trying to say when they're saying all of that stuff. And I was just being inundated with it. And back in the days, sometimes I spoke before I thought. Me, I was one of them preachers that, me nor the devil, neither one knew what I was going to say, because I didn't want the devil to jump on me and try to change it around. So sometimes I'd speak a little bit too much, and I became fearful that in preaching that I would slip and say one of those words. There went the sermon that day for sure. So I was so troubled by it that I sought out Brother McFarland. And boy, he spoke some wisdom into my spirit. Never slipped, never said, because it wasn't in my heart. See, it's out of the abundance of the heart that the mouth speaketh. Your head can hear a lot of things, just don't let it get in your heart. So I just want to let you know how this church has impacted my life. Even though my brother David married into this church, and the Harrison family has been such a inspiration and a support through the years. And Jerry and Junior and June, I understand, is now at the Fountains, and I'm going to see her later this afternoon. That woman has been just a general in my life. My family loves her, my children loves her, and we're growing older. We're growing older. So I want to also, before I continue, I want to compliment worship today. I have been preparing another message for weeks, knowing that I was coming. Last night, I wrestled. See, it's not a matter for a preacher of if they have something to say. Oh, we could be here a while. But it's, Lord, what do we say? So I was trying to fine-tune my spirit. Now, I figured that the Lord, He knows the end from the beginning. 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, He could have spoke that into my spirit, and I could have worked on it a little more. But He didn't do that. I've had God change my mind in the pulpit, and that's really scary. But I wrestled last night. Dead spot on, brother. The exhortation, dead spot on. And I sat there and I saw those words, and I said, Lord, are they just words to us? Man, it was going on in my spirit. Is it just words to us that we sing of the grandeur and the greatness and the splendor of God? Is it just words? Do we have any experience with that? All of His greatness resides in you. And I'm going to give you a conundrum this morning, just in passing, and then we're going to go and we're going to speak that word that was spoken this morning and confirm that word. There's a conundrum. Jesus said, greater works shall you do than I did. How many of you have raised the dead? Any of you ever cleansed a leper? Where's your greater works? It's a conundrum. Come some other time I may talk about that conundrum. It's a powerful thing. And Jesus said, you're going to be able to do greater works than me. It's powerful. But this morning, I'm going to confirm this word that was involved in all of our singing this morning. But I'm going to not only talk about how great God is and how powerful He is, but how God uses instruments like you and I to achieve His work on planet Earth. God did not do in vacuum miracles and His power displayed. He used men and women. Judges chapter 6 this morning. I'm going to talk about Gideon. I was going to do something else, but I'm going to... The title of this message is God Uses Ordinary People. See, we have problems sometimes thinking that we qualify. And we don't understand that God doesn't call those that are qualified. He qualifies those that He does call. He equips those that He calls for specific purposes. He calls them, and then He says, I'm going to fit you to where you can do that. Because you know why? It's very simple. I don't want you taking any of the credit. It's not that God's a glory hog. It's just that He doesn't want us to be. It was like the guy that was going to write the book on how to be humble and how I attained it, and he figured that stopped him from writing it. God uses ordinary people. Judges chapter 1, I'd like for you to read with me. The children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord. Now this is a pattern of their, how many know that that's a pattern? And the children of Israel did evil. I'm glad that God's mercy never fails. Did you know what? Even God in Judges decided one day, they're going to cry out to me again, and I ain't going to listen to them. Did you know that God said that? In Judges. They cried out to him, and he listened. God's infinite in his mercy toward us. See, we really need to get a handle of that because we disqualify ourselves way, way before God would ever disqualify us. See, there's an old song that sings, God and the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord delivered them from the hand of Midian 7 years. Verse 2. Do you have the, okay. And the hand of Midian prevailed against Israel, and because of the Midianites, the children of Israel made them dens, which are in the mountains, a hidden caves. Which are in the mountains and caves and strongholds. And they encamped against them and destroyed the increase of the earth. Boy, this is powerful. I'm going to come back to this. You're going to see God in his magnificence here. Till thou come to Gaza, and left no substance for Israel, neither sheep nor ox or ass. That jumped to 6. Is that where we are? Okay. And Israel was greatly impoverished because of the Midianites, and the children of Israel cried unto the Lord. That the Lord sent a prophet unto the children of Israel. Listen to this. God sent a prophet and told them, Thus saith the Lord of Israel, I brought you up out of Egypt, and brought you forth out of the house of bondage. That jumped to 10. That it was 8 and 9 and there. And I delivered you out of the hand of the Egyptians and out of the hand of all that oppressed you, and drave them out from before you, and gave you their land. Now verse 10. And I said unto you, I am the Lord your God. Fear not the gods of the Amorites, in whose land ye dwell, but you have not obeyed my voice. This is a prophet talking. And there came an angel of the Lord, and sat under an oak tree, which was in Ophrah, that pertained unto Joash the Abiezrite, and his son Gideon, threshold wheat by the winepress, to hide it from the Midianites. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him and said, The Lord is with thee, thy mighty man of valor. He's a chicken. He's got a yellow stripe down his back so big you can't even see his shirt. He's hiding. And God says, see, God doesn't see us as we see ourselves. God sees us as what he's going to do to us and through us. See? He spoke. He spoke into his future. Said, stop looking at your presence. And you know what? Gideon, he's like us. Now I'm going to just paraphrase. And he whined. He whined and he murmured to this angel of the Lord that came and appeared to him. He said, if you're the angel of the Lord, why has all of this happened to me? One of the greatest questions and one of the hardest questions to answer. I pastored 54 years. Is why does bad things happen to good people? One of the hardest questions you can ask, especially when people are in the midst of the emotional turmoil of the tragedy. good. Why is all of this happening? Now, it started, remember verse 1, and the children of Israel did evil in the sight of God. Oh, we don't want to blame ourselves at all. We don't want to blame the sin in our life and the disobedience in our life. The first thing we want to do is blame God. That's what Gideon did. But now the Lord has forsaken us, and He's delivered us into the hands of the Midianites. Go ahead to the next verse. You know, it's so wonderful. This man Gideon challenged God 3 times. Verse 7, you see him throwing a fleece down on the ground to test whether it was really a God that was speaking to him. And in all of that, God was patient with him. In fact, the angel of the Lord had to remind him, he said, you're not going to die. Oh, I know you deserve to die for questioning me and for not having faith and understanding and be obedient to what I'm going to say and listen to what I'm going to say. I know that you deserve death, but I'm not going to kill you. Thank you. Maybe my calendar told me that there was something I need to take care of. Do it later. There's an old song that sings like this. Some of you will know it. Got any rivers you think are uncrossable? Got any mountains you can't tunnel through? My God specializes in things thought impossible, and He can do what no other power can do. And that's what our singing was about this morning. But God just uses ordinary people. One of the most, I think it was right back in the day that you're talking about. Do you remember Betsy that hit the hurricane that hit Galveston and Brownsville in that area in 1968? Where were you at?
I was only 9 years old. I was in the elementary school. But thanks for bringing that up.
That was a few years ago, Tom. I mean. Well, I was at IBC. I was actually, that was my first, I spent three of my favorite years was in the 3rd grade.
3 years?
I went to Bible college in three years. We had a 3 and a 4 year diploma, and I went for 3 years. Left for 10 years. That's when I graduated, and from there, and my first pastorate was up in Grass Valley, and that's when I became familiar with all of this gang here. And also another guy I really love is Frank Royce. That Royce family, cool people. Love him. Preached for him a lot up in Brownsville when I was in the area. But Betsy, hurricane, 1968. I was at Bible college. I was a student. You weren't. Okay. One of the focuses, and whether I was in Mobile, Alabama, it was we were 27 days in San Antonio without seeing the sun, raining every day. 27 days. Huge storm. I was watching the news, kind of trying to keep up with where this monster storm was, and I saw an image in 1968 I have never forgot. When the news flash, it showed destruction and all of that kind of stuff, I saw something so unbelievable that it caught my memory forever, and I saw an ordinary 2x4 piece of material had gone through a concrete abutment. How many know that is impossible? But somehow it happened. You see, that 2x4 is like us. See, it is impossible to do the task that we are assigned to do in our generation. It's humongous. But under the power and the influence of God's power and Spirit, we can penetrate where it's impossible to penetrate. Let me tell you something. We live in our Sunday school teacher this morning appreciated the words that he spoke concerning where we are as a nation and the confrontation of evil and where we are beset on every side, aren't we? We are faced today with a huge dilemma of whether or not we're going to become a socialist, progressive nation or whether we're going to return to the roots of being a Christian nation. We're in the middle of it. From the natural standpoint, I fear for my grandbabies. My Sydney is here this morning. She's a little disappointed. You know, I preached a message in San Antonio she heard, and I used her in that sermon. So she kind of feels like I need to use her in every sermon that I preach. But my Sydney's here this morning, and I care for her during the summer because my daughter, single mom, is so busy that in her job she's a big mucky muck in Placer County, and so I come. Somebody asked me one time, who gets more benefit out of you coming, her or you? I think it depends on who you ask. You know, the scripture is so honest. It tears back the veneer of, you know, we think all these guys that God used were such boom, 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 boom. No, they weren't. You talk about this Gideon, he was a big chicken. I mean, God used some people that, you know, on the outside, you would probably skip them. I'm going to talk about this Gideon just for a few minutes. My first point is that God gives an undeniable call to the most unlikely person facing unsolvable circumstances. So it look too big for you? Does it look too big? Does the problems that you face in life and the circumstances that you see surrounding us, does it look too big for you? Does it look impossible? You candidate. Do you feel like that you would be the most unlikely person that God would ever use? I don't care how old you are. There's some young, I love the young people in this church. My goodness. This town, this area of town should be turned upside down for God, and I'm going to challenge you with that today. God's calling you to do something that's unsolvable, but He's going to give you an undeniable call, and God is calling to you today. Will you step out and believe that I am the powerful one that you sang about today, or are they just words on a screen? When you look at this man Gideon, he's hiding, he's fearful. He said, I am the least among us. Did you know his dad's family was the last of the families? Down the progressive list of hierarchy, his dad was the furthest down. Gideon was the youngest of all of them. He was the least of all of the Israelites. When you look at this story, God took the person that was the absolute least likely. He didn't call one of the big elders of the city. Man, he didn't call one of the powerful ones. He called the skinny little young kid that was the least in the kingdom. Gideon was all scared and fluttery. And when God told him, he said, he proved himself to him at the spot. And then he told him, he said, I want you to go in, I want you to tear down all the groves that this town and all of you people have grown up in. And the groves were places of idol worship. He said, I want you to go down and I want you to tear them all down. He was so scared. He gathered some men quietly around him, and they did a midnight reconnaissance. They couldn't do it in the daytime. They were scared to death, so they did it at midnight. When nobody was watching, they said, okay, we'll do it. Snuck in, destroyed him, and ran home and hid. Well, the lottery was cast the next day, and they finally determined it was Gideon. They come to his house, bring him out here, we're going to kill him. Lord, this mission is going to last just one day. They wanted to kill him. God spared him. And then God said, I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. We're going to deliver you from all of this 55,000 army that has surrounded you. And that had caused you to live in caves and dens and hide under trees and bushes. And I'm going to deliver you from them. And we're going to utterly destroy them. In the reading of this, you're going to see two words, rock and winepress. Remember them words, because they're powerful as we get along in this. You may think, well, Lord, I'm just a waitress at the local cafe. I just work at Burger King flipping burgers, taking orders. I'm just a janitor. I'm just a nobody. Nobody even recognizes me when I walk in a room. I'm absolutely invisible. And I even feel invisible at times. How many feels invisible at times? God says, you're my candidate, man. I'm going to use you. But Lord, I'm too young. I don't have any experience. I don't know the Word of God. Well, neither did Gideon. God says, I'm going to do something to you. See, the next step is that, number 2, is that God wants unswerving obedience. You're not the one that's going to run the show. You're not the one that's going to develop the strategy. You're not the one that's going to tell God what to do. Because God's already called the most unlikely person, and He's going to give him the word. And by the way, He didn't give all the rest of the Israelites the word. He only gave him the word. Now, if you're the least in the whole country, how are you going to address the crowd to convince them to come along with you? God says, I want unswerving obedience from you. And that's when He did the little reconnaissance at night. He was